Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we'll be exploring one of the greatest frontiers of science, the vast, mysterious, and endlessly fascinating landscape of the mind. It is a realm that never fully reveals itself, a place where thoughts rise like quiet constellations and feelings move like hidden tides. Your mind contains entire universes that you travel through every day, often without noticing. It holds secrets older than your memories and possibilities brighter than anything you have yet imagined. It is a marvel of the natural world, one of the greatest wonders of the cosmos, and contains secrets we may never fully understand. As you listen, you may feel a soft curiosity begin to stir, a gentle sense that your mind is far deeper and more extraordinary than you ever thought. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, let your breathing slow. Allow your body to soften, and let your mind gently drift towards rest. Let's begin. Your conscious mind is only a tiny island in a vast ocean of hidden processes. Far beneath deliberate thought, an enormous realm of quiet activity shapes every moment of experience. Patterns of sensation are evaluated, emotional tones drift and shift, and ancient reflexes measure the state of the body long before awareness arrives. Countless signals move through pathways that have perfected their timing across a lifetime, choosing which details rise toward attention and which dissolve back into silence. This hidden activity evaluates danger, comfort, familiarity, and novelty, while the conscious part observes only a polished result. Even the feeling of making a decision often forms after deeper networks have already begun the action. The small, illuminated portion that feels like the self is supported by layers of memory, instinct, and learned predictions quietly working in harmony and sometimes in tension. That larger ocean is always awake, always adjusting, always guiding perception from behind a veil so fine that it rarely reveals its presence. The mind can generate entire worlds during dreaming that feel more real than waking life. During sleep, the boundaries of perception loosen and the inner architecture of the mind begins to assemble landscapes from fragments of memory, emotion, and imagination. These dream worlds unfold with their own sense of logic, guided by the silent movements of networks that normally support waking perception. Structures appear without effort, shaped by stored impressions that combine in new and striking ways. Characters seem alive, environments feel textured and solid, and events carry emotional weight even though none of it comes from the outside world. Motor systems rehearse actions while the body remains still, and sensory regions react to imagined sights and sounds as if they were real. The mind becomes both creator and observer, stitching together scenes that shift with remarkable fluidity. When the dream fades, the world collapses instantly, yet its influence can linger with surprising strength. Each dream reveals the astonishing ability of the mind to craft entire realities from pure internal activity. Thoughts can appear before you are aware you are thinking them. Ideas often rise into clarity with a sense of suddenness, yet the groundwork for them begins long before awareness takes notice. Beneath the surface, countless signals combine, evaluate, and reinforce one another, gradually forming patterns that grow strong enough to cross into consciousness. A word surfaces just when it is needed, a creative solution arrives after a period of silence, or an unexpected insight appears without deliberate reasoning. These moments feel spontaneous, yet they emerge from the constant background work of circuits comparing memories, predictions, and subtle cues from the environment. The conscious mind experiences only the final shape of the thought, not the unfolding process that constructed it. This hidden activity continues even during rest, preparing connections that later burst forth as complete ideas. What seems like an instant spark is actually the culmination of deep and ongoing work that remains outside the spotlight of awareness. The mind predicts the world before it perceives it. Every moment of perception begins with an internal expectation. Specialized networks form guesses about what the senses are likely to encounter, using learned patterns and past experiences as guides. Incoming signals are evaluated against these predictions, and only the differences are highlighted as new information. This strategy allows the mind to move quickly and efficiently through a complex world, recognizing familiar scenes with minimal effort and reacting to changes with remarkable speed. When predictions match reality, perception feels smooth and clear. When they do not, the mind must revise its model, producing a sense of surprise or confusion. This continuous interplay shapes how objects appear, how sounds are interpreted, and even how emotions unfold. Perception becomes a dialogue between what the mind expects and what the world provides, revealing that experience is built not only from sensory input, but also from the quiet anticipations that precede every moment. Memory is rebuilt every time it is recalled. Retrieving a past event is not the act of retrieving a perfect recording. Instead, the mind assembles the memory from scattered traces stored across many regions. Each detail is reconstructed based on current knowledge, emotional states, and interpretations that have developed since the original moment. As the memory becomes active, it enters a flexible state where it can gain new associations or shift in tone before being stored again. Over time, these subtle adjustments can reshape the memory so that it reflects not only what once happened, but also how the mind has grown and changed. Details may soften or intensify, and the meaning of the event can evolve with every retelling. This constant rebuilding allows memories to remain useful guides for future decisions, rather than fixed snapshots of the past. It is a living process, shaped by experience and shaped by the needs of the present moment. Your brain edits reality to keep your sense of self stable. The world arrives as a flood of sensations, far more than conscious awareness could handle. To create coherence, the mind filters, organizes, and interprets these signals in ways that support a continuous and recognizable identity. Conflicting impressions may be softened or explained away, while patterns that align with existing beliefs or self-images are strengthened. Emotional systems mark certain details as significant, guiding attention toward what matters most for maintaining stability. Even gaps in perception are quietly filled with plausible information so that the flow of experience remains unbroken. This editing process operates constantly, shaping not only how events appear, but also how they fit into the ongoing narrative of the self. Without this continual refinement, experience would feel fragmented and unpredictable. Instead, the mind weaves a steady sense of continuity from an ever-shifting world. Imagination activates many of the same networks as real experience. When the mind creates a scene from within, neural regions responsible for sight, sound, movement, and emotion begin to stir, as if responding to real stimuli. A vivid mental image can awaken activity in visual pathways. Imagined music can engage auditory circuits, and mentally rehearsed actions can stimulate motor areas without triggering actual movement. The signals are gentler than those produced by direct perception, yet they follow similar patterns and evoke similar sensations. This shared architecture explains why imagined practice can improve skills and why emotional responses can arise strongly from purely internal creations. Imagination becomes a versatile workspace where possibilities can be tested, memories can be explored from new angles, and creative combinations can form without external input. In this realm, the mind gains freedom to experiment with realities that exist only as patterns of internal activity. The mind can hallucinate without illness when conditions are right. When sensory information becomes limited or imbalanced, the mind may begin to supply its own content to maintain continuity. In darkness, faint shapes may flicker across the inner field. During periods of extreme fatigue, sounds may seem to whisper from the edges of awareness. In moments of sensory monotony, such as prolonged isolation or repetitive environments, internally generated imagery can drift into the foreground. Transitional states near sleep also open pathways for spontaneous visions, as networks shift from external processing to internal simulation. These experiences arise because the mind is built to interpret noise, detect patterns, and fill gaps when the world fails to provide clear signals. The resulting images or sounds can feel convincing, even though they have no external source. Rather than reflecting disorder, they reveal how actively the mind constructs experience and how readily it supplies its own material when the environment grows quiet. Every mind creates a unique internal language. Beyond shared vocabulary, each person develops a private network of meanings shaped by personal history. Certain colors carry emotional weight that others might not feel. A scent may evoke a vivid memory that no one else associates with it. A phrase may trigger a chain of images built from countless past encounters. These connections form a distinctive internal code that guides creativity, problem-solving, and interpretation of events. The rhythm of inner speech, the metaphors favored in moments of confusion, and the symbolic links between experiences all contribute to this individual dialect. It evolves continuously as new memories form and old ones fade. No two minds attach the same blend of emotion, imagery, and significance to any single word or idea. This private language becomes the lens through which the world is understood, shaping thought in ways that cannot be fully expressed outwardly. The mind can experience time at different speeds. Intense moments can seem to expand, filling the senses with intricate detail, while long stretches of routine can collapse into a brief impression. These distortions arise because time is not perceived directly. Instead, the mind relies on the number and richness of events encoded during an interval. When attention is high and each moment feels meaningful, more information is stored, creating the impression of a longer span. When experiences repeat with little variation, fewer distinct impressions form, and the interval feels short in hindsight. Emotional states also play a role, heightening the density of memory or thinning it into a gentle blur. Even anticipation or boredom can bend subjective durations. Although the external clock moves at a steady pace, the inner sense of time is shaped by engagement, novelty, and the depth of processing that occurs beneath awareness. There are hidden sensory systems you rarely notice. Beneath the familiar senses lies an intricate web of quieter ones that silently anchor experience. Deep within the structures of the inner ear, delicate chambers filled with fluid respond to tilting, turning, and acceleration. They allow the body to understand its position even when the eyes are closed. Interwoven through every muscle and joint, specialized receptors track the stretch and angle of each movement down to the smallest adjustment, enabling graceful motion without conscious direction. Within organs, subtle detectors listen for shifts in temperature, pressure, and chemical balance, sending signals that shape hunger, thirst, comfort, and emotional tone before any of these sensations become clear. The skin contributes an extraordinary range of information as well. It can detect a faint vibration, the cooling of nearby air, or the weight of an object resting so lightly that it barely leaves an impression. These systems operate in unison, forming a continuous portrait of the internal and external worlds. They do not seek attention. They provide stability, orientation, and safety in absolute silence, building a foundation upon which every moment of conscious experience rests. The mind fills in blind spots that you never see. Vision appears seamless, but the information entering the eyes contains gaps, distortions, and missing pieces. The place where the optic nerve leaves each eye has no ability to register light at all, yet the mind constructs a complete seam by extending surrounding colors and textures across that empty space. When an object is partially hidden, the missing section is not perceived as an absence. The mind reconstructs the hidden contours, producing a coherent interpretation rather than a fragment. During rapid shifts of gaze, raw input blurs and becomes nearly unusable, but internal mechanisms stabilize the image by blending the glimpses that came before and after the movement. The same phenomenon occurs in hearing when brief sections of sound are lost beneath noise. The mind inserts the most plausible continuation, creating an unbroken message even though the ears did not receive it. These processes unfold constantly. They repair the chaotic and incomplete stream of sensory data, creating a smooth and believable world without revealing how much was missing. Reality becomes a carefully assembled picture, painted faster than awareness can follow. A single memory can reshape the structure of your brain. When an experience becomes meaningful enough to hold, the brain does not simply save it as a static imprint. Instead, networks begin a gradual transformation, strengthening some connections while allowing less relevant ones to fade. Cells that fired together during the event become more responsive to one another, creating a pathway that did not exist before. The influence continues after the moment has passed. Molecular changes unfold over hours, stabilizing the new connections so that they can endure. Emotional significance amplifies this process, guiding resources toward preserving events that shape understanding or survival. Even subtle experiences can alter the internal landscape if they introduce patterns that the brain has never encountered. The next time a similar situation arises, signals travel more easily along the altered pathway, influencing interpretation, expectation, and reaction. In this way, a single memory becomes a physical change in the tissue of the mind, woven into a structure that continues to evolve with each new experience. The brain is never finished. Each remembered moment becomes part of its architecture. Attention can change how the world physically appears. When focus narrows onto a detail, the mind reallocates processing power with remarkable precision. Regions responsible for analyzing shape, motion, color, depth, and significance become more active, while regions handling unrelated information quiet down. As this shift occurs, the chosen detail grows sharper, brighter, and more vivid, while the surrounding scene softens. This change does not come from the external world. It arises from the internal distribution of resources that determines which information receives the most careful analysis. Even subtle movements can appear more dynamic under focused attention. Colors may seem richer, textures more intricate, or patterns more pronounced. When attention drifts, the visual experience transforms again, revealing the fluid relationship between perception and focus. This process extends beyond sight. Sounds can become clearer, internal sensations more pronounced, and ideas more coherent when attention settles upon them. Perception becomes a sculpted experience, shaped by the shifting spotlight of focus that moves continually through the senses. Your brain never truly shuts off. Even when the body lies completely still, the mind maintains a rich and organized pattern of activity. During sleep, networks coordinate the sorting of memories, the repair of cells, and the regulation of hormones. They also manage constant monitoring of breath, temperature, and internal balance. In waking moments, the mind continues with its relentless, quiet work. It predicts what might occur, prepares responses, interprets sensory data, and adjusts emotional tone in real time. Hidden networks generate spontaneous waves of activity, weaving together ideas, reflections, and fragments of memory that drift across awareness. These waves rise and fall even when the conscious mind is resting. The result is a system that never reaches true silence. Instead, it shifts among states of alertness, contemplation, dreaming, and deep restoration. Every moment is supported by this continuous internal motion. Thought and feeling appear only at the surface, while a vast undercurrent of organization sustains the structure of experience. The mind keeps processing information long after you stop focusing. When attention disengages from a problem, much of the work has only just begun. Deeper systems continue examining the fragments that were gathered earlier, sorting them into patterns that never reached full awareness. Associations form silently. Conflicting ideas settle into new arrangements. Hidden relationships between memories become clearer as signals travel through networks that specialize in integration and creative recombination. Hours later, a conclusion may rise with sudden clarity, even though no deliberate thought has occurred in the meantime. Emotional understanding follows a similar path. A moment that seemed insignificant can grow meaningful after the mind continues analyzing its implications in quiet background activity. This ongoing processing allows the mind to solve problems that would be too complex for conscious thought alone. Insight emerges as if from nowhere, delivered fully formed to awareness. Behind the scenes, the deeper layers of the mind have been working continuously, unhurried and unseen. You can be influenced by ideas you do not consciously notice. Every environment carries subtle signals, many of which glide past awareness while still shaping thought and behavior. A glimpse of an expression, the tone of a voice, or the placement of an object can shift emotion without revealing why the shift occurred. Words seen only briefly can change how later information is interpreted, creating a sense of familiarity or caution that feels spontaneous. Sounds, colors, and symbols contribute signals that guide small adjustments in attention and expectation. The mind evaluates these cues rapidly, drawing upon deep associations formed through years of experience. Even though the signals remain below the level of deliberate awareness, they influence choices, reactions, and interpretations with quiet continuity. This is not vulnerability. It is a natural feature of a system built to extract meaning even from incomplete information. The mind absorbs far more than it reports, weaving unnoticed impressions into the foundation of thought. The mind can treat imagined dangers as real ones. When a threat unfolds in imagination, emotional systems may respond with the same urgency they reserve for physical danger. Heart rate increases, breathing changes, muscles tighten, and the body prepares for action despite the absence of any real threat. This occurs because the networks that evaluate risk respond to meaning rather than to physical signals alone. A memory of fear, a projected future scenario, or a purely imagined peril can activate the same circuits that evolved to keep the body safe. These responses are not mistakes. They allow the mind to rehearse protective actions before situations happen. Yet the same mechanism can create stress when imagination conjures dangers that will never arrive. The line between inner and outer threat is flexible, shaped by emotion, expectation, and memory. The body reacts not only to the world, but also to the possibilities that the mind creates. Your sense of self is a constantly updated story. The narrative of identity feels continuous, but it is built from a shifting collection of memories, values, and interpretations that evolve with each new experience. Every conversation, challenge, success, and quiet moment provides fresh information about who you are and how you fit into the world. The mind weaves these pieces together, smoothing contradictions and linking them into a story that maintains coherence across time. Old beliefs may weaken, new insights may grow, and past events may be reorganized to support emerging understanding. The story changes gently or dramatically depending on circumstance, yet it feels stable because the mind excels at blending change into continuity. Identity becomes an ever-growing tapestry shaped by emotion, memory, and interpretation. Though the story evolves endlessly, it always feels like the same voice speaking. The mind uses emotion as a navigation system. Emotions act as internal signals that highlight opportunity, risk, curiosity, or caution. They arise quickly, carrying information distilled from memory, expectation, and the current environment. A feeling of calm may point toward safety. A spark of interest may suggest a path worth exploring. A sense of discomfort may signal that something is misaligned even before the reason becomes clear. These signals guide decisions by narrowing the field of possibilities. They help determine where to direct attention and how to interpret unfolding events. Emotion works in partnership with reasoning, shaping priorities and motivating action. Without it, choices would become slow and indecisive, lacking clarity about what matters. Through this constant guidance, emotion becomes a map that reveals meaning, supports adaptation, and enriches the unfolding story of the inner world. You generate more thoughts per day than you can ever recall. Within the mind, thought rises in a continuous stream that moves far faster than awareness can follow. Some thoughts take the form of faint sensory echoes that dissolve before they are recognized. Others appear as soft emotional impressions that nudge attention without forming into words. Still others emerge as fragments of memory, stray associations, or flashes of imagery that vanish almost instantly. Beneath the surface, deeper networks remain active at all times, evaluating the environment, adjusting expectations, and preparing subtle reactions that never reach conscious clarity. Every shift in posture, every glance, every small decision is supported by thoughts that form and fade without becoming part of awareness. Even dreams contribute their own layer of silent activity, adding impressions that shape mood the next day. Only a tiny fraction of this enormous inner landscape becomes part of experience in a form that awareness can grasp. The rest continues unnoticed and unnamed, influencing behavior through countless quiet adjustments. Far from being empty space, the unremembered regions of thought are where the mind does much of its real work, surrounding deliberate reflection with a vast and constantly moving field of activity. The mind can rehearse future experiences with surprising accuracy. Before an anticipated moment arrives, the mind can simulate it with remarkable richness. Visual regions form landscapes, rooms, faces, and movements, as though drawing them from thin air. Motor regions shape these imagined scenes into flowing action, adjusting posture, timing, and balance, even though the body remains perfectly still. Emotional systems evaluate each imagined possibility and highlight outcomes that may be useful or risky. The mind practices responses, explores alternative strategies, and tests countless details without any physical consequence. These internal rehearsals strengthen pathways associated with performance, making real action smoother when the moment arrives. They allow difficult conversations to be explored internally, long journeys to be previewed, and complex decisions to be examined from multiple angles. The simulated moment does not need to match reality exactly for the preparation to be effective. What matters is the depth of engagement. Through this process, the mind becomes capable of meeting the future as though it had already stepped into it. Your brain relies on patterns more than facts. Rather than processing each detail in isolation, the mind organizes experience into broad structures that capture the essence of what is unfolding. These structures form through repetition and learning, gradually shaping expectations that guide interpretation. When new information arises, the mind compares it to these stored arrangements, seeking the closest match so that perception becomes immediate and coherent. This approach allows recognition of complex scenes, such as a bustling street or a forest trail, without needing to analyze every element. It also explains why familiar melodies can be identified after just a few notes, or why a single gesture can convey a complete intention. Facts remain important, yet they are woven into the larger fabric of patterns that the mind depends upon. This reliance allows quick decision-making in uncertain situations and provides stability when sensory information becomes noisy or incomplete. Through patterns, the mind transforms overwhelming complexity into a world that feels manageable and meaningful. The mind creates illusions that help you survive. Perception appears straightforward, but much of it is shaped by internal adjustments that support quick interpretation and swift action. The mind brightens edges that signal important boundaries, enhances contrast when clarity is needed, and smooths motion so that the world appears stable, even though the eyes constantly shift. It fills small gaps in vision, creating the illusion of continuous objects, even when the sensory data contains interruptions. When situations are ambiguous, the mind often selects the safest interpretation, allowing the body to respond before uncertainty becomes danger. Colors can appear richer than the raw signals suggest. Sounds can seem more organized than the scattered vibrations that reach the ears. These illusions are not flaws. They are protective strategies that allow the mind to respond rapidly in a complex world. By constructing a simplified and clarified version of reality, the mind supports survival while preserving the sense of a smooth and coherent environment. Internal maps guide your movements through the world. Within the mind, networks maintain detailed representations of the body and its surroundings. These internal maps track the position of limbs, the direction of movement, and the distance to objects, allowing coordinated action without the need for continuous visual monitoring. They update rapidly as the body shifts, integrating information from muscles, joints, vision, hearing, and touch. When walking, these maps predict how each step should feel, adjusting posture before imbalance becomes noticeable. When reaching, they estimate the path of the hand and anticipate the weight and texture of the object. They also link with memory, helping the mind navigate familiar spaces, even in low light or with minimal attention. These maps are flexible. They reshape themselves as the body grows, heals, or learns new skills. They support both precise control and creative movement. Without them, even simple actions would become hesitant and uncertain. Through these silent guides, the mind maintains a constant sense of orientation. The mind refines memories while you sleep. During sleep, the mind enters a state of active reorganization in which the events of the day are sorted, integrated, and reshaped. Memories that hold emotional weight receive special attention. Their intensity may be softened, their meaning clarified, or their connections expanded into new insights. Skills practiced during waking hours are strengthened as the mind rehearses them internally, stabilizing the pathways that make performance smoother the next day. Ordinary experiences are not ignored. They are sifted for relevance, linked with older memories, and positioned within the broader structure of knowledge. The mind identifies patterns that were not visible during the rush of daily activity and extracts lessons that guide future choices. This nightly work unfolds without awareness, yet it profoundly shapes learning, emotional balance, and creativity. By morning, the mind carries a more refined version of the previous day, ready to meet new experiences with updated understanding. Your brain contains silent networks waiting to activate. Large regions within the mind remain quiet most of the time, not because they lack purpose, but because they hold abilities that are only needed in specific circumstances. These areas house alternative strategies, creative approaches, and unconventional ways of understanding the world. When a situation demands a skill that lies outside familiar routines, these silent networks awaken. They form new connections, compare unfamiliar patterns, and offer solutions that the active networks did not consider. These quiet regions also support recovery after injury, learning to take over tasks once performed by damaged areas. Their presence provides resilience, adaptability, and the possibility of entirely new ways of thinking. Their silence is a form of readiness. They wait patiently until the moment calls for something different, then rise with capabilities that were hidden until needed. The mind can solve problems while you are not aware of it. When attention moves on from a difficult question, deeper layers of the mind continue working. These regions draw upon fragments collected earlier, combining them in new ways that conscious reasoning would not attempt. They test relationships between memories, compare patterns, and explore possibilities in silence. This quiet work occurs during ordinary tasks, moments of rest, and even sleep. Eventually, when the hidden computation reaches a clear conclusion, the answer rises into awareness as a moment of insight. It feels sudden, but it is the result of continuous behind-the-scenes exploration. This process also helps resolve emotional questions that were too complex for immediate understanding. Meaning forms gradually, shaped by subtle shifts that occur long after the moment has passed. Through this hidden activity, the mind extends its problem-solving capacity far beyond the limits of conscious thought. Your sense of reality depends on timing signals inside your brain. Perception requires the mind to combine signals that arrive at different speeds. Light reaches the senses quickly, sound lags behind, touch has its own pace, and internal sensations move at rhythms shaped by the body. The mind must align these streams so that they form a coherent moment. It sometimes delays one signal so that it matches another. It sometimes predicts what should be arriving and adjusts the interpretation when the prediction is correct. Even very small shifts in timing can change how an event appears. A sound may seem to come from a different source if its timing is off by a fraction of a heartbeat. A movement may appear faster or slower depending on how signals are synchronized. Through precise coordination, the mind creates the illusion that everything unfolds in perfect unity, even though the senses deliver a scattered and uneven flow of information. The mind blends past and present to predict what comes next. Every moment contains echoes of earlier experiences. The mind examines the present through the lens of patterns learned across a lifetime, searching for familiar shapes that can guide interpretation. When it finds one, it predicts what is likely to happen in the next instant. This prediction shapes how the moment is perceived, preparing the body for action before the full evidence arrives. The process continues even when the environment changes. If the present does not match anything stored in memory, the mind updates its internal models and expands its understanding. The blending of past and present allows the mind to stay ahead of unfolding events, turning raw sensation into meaningful expectation. Through this constant interplay, perception becomes proactive rather than reactive, giving the mind a powerful advantage in navigating a complex world. Thoughts can shape the structure of your physical brain. Each train of thought is not only an abstract event, it is also a pattern of activity flowing through living tissue. When certain ways of thinking are repeated, the roots that carry them begin to change. Connections between some cells grow stronger and more responsive, while other roots become less used and gradually fall quiet. Mental habits such as careful reflection, creative exploration, or self-criticism leave distinct traces in this changing network. Over time, these traces guide which thoughts rise easily and which require effort. Focused practice in a skill, a language, or a new way of understanding the self can thicken entire pathways, allowing signals to travel with greater speed and reliability. Rumination can do the same for anxious patterns, making them more likely to appear again. The brain becomes a landscape shaped by the history of its own activity, an evolving structure that carries the imprint of the thoughts it has most often hosted. The mind can invent emotions on the spot. Feelings that seem to arrive fully formed often begin as unexplained bodily sensations. A tightness in the chest, a flutter in the stomach, or a burst of energy with no clear origin emerges first. The mind then searches for meaning that can explain these signals. In that search, it draws upon memory, context, and expectation, weaving a story that turns raw sensation into a specific emotion. The same racing heart may be read as fear in one moment and anticipation in another. A restless energy may be named irritation or excitement, depending on what the mind believes is happening. This interpretive act can happen so quickly that the creative step is invisible. Yet each time, the feeling is constructed in real time from a combination of signals and explanation. Emotion becomes not just a reaction to the world, but an ongoing invention that reflects what the mind thinks the body is trying to say. Your perception of your body is partly an illusion. The sense of having a solid, clearly defined body seems obvious, yet it is assembled from many streams of information, but the mind must knit together. Signals from muscles and joints report stretch and pressure. Touch receptors describe contact at the surface. The inner ear relays orientation and movement. Vision supplies an image of limbs in space. These signals do not always agree and rarely arrive all at once. The mind reconciles them by imposing a stable map, deciding where the edges of the body are and how it occupies space. Experiments that trick one sense while leaving others unchanged can make a fake limb feel genuinely owned or make the perceived location of the body drift away from its physical position. These effects show that the feeling of embodiment is not simply detected. It is constructed. The mind continually maintains a convincing portrait of the body, even though that portrait is an interpretation rather than a direct measurement. The mind can experience sensations that come from nowhere. A sudden itch with no visible cause, a faint buzzing that no one else can hear, or a vivid feeling of warmth that does not match the surrounding air can all arise without an external source. These experiences begin when activity inside sensory regions becomes strong enough to imitate incoming signals. Neural circuits that normally respond to touch, sound, or temperature start to fire based on internal patterns instead of messages from the outside world. The mind reads these patterns in the usual way and produces a sensation. Such events can appear during quiet moments, periods of stress, deep focus, or transitions between waking and sleep. They show that perception is not merely a window through which information flows. It is an active process that can generate its own content. In these moments, the mind demonstrates that it can create sensory reality purely from its own internal dynamics. You can think in multiple layers at once. While one clear line of thought occupies awareness, other processes run in parallel beneath it. One layer monitors the environment for sudden change, listening for unusual sounds and scanning for unexpected movement. Another evaluates the emotional tone of the situation, measuring how safe or uncertain things feel. A further layer may be quietly reviewing unfinished questions, assembling fragments that did not fit earlier into a more coherent shape. These layers interact without announcing themselves. A decision can shift direction because a quiet evaluation changed, even while the conscious story seems to move straight forward. When a creative idea appears suddenly, it often reflects the combined work of several layers that have been exploring possibilities in the background. This multi-layered activity gives the mind depth. It allows attention to focus on one task while remaining ready to respond to others, and it supports complex forms of understanding that no single stream of thought could manage alone. The mind can form beliefs without evidence. In the face of uncertainty, the mind seeks patterns that can bring order. When it encounters repeated impressions that appear related, it may adopt an explanation simply because it ties them together. A belief can take shape from a feeling of familiarity, a story heard many times, or a single striking event that leaves an outsized impression. Once formed, that belief influences which information seems important, which details are ignored, and which questions are never asked. Emotional comfort often reinforces this process. Explanations that reduce anxiety or preserve a sense of control are more likely to be accepted, even when they rest on fragile ground. Over time, the belief can feel as solid as a carefully tested conclusion, even though it began as a convenient way to handle complexity. This tendency allows the mind to move quickly in a confusing world, but it also shows how understanding can grow from need rather than from proof. Imagined sounds activate the auditory system almost as strongly as real ones. When a melody plays in silence inside the mind, the regions that normally respond to vibrations in the air begin to stir. Patterns of activity form that resemble those produced by actual sound, mapping imagined notes across the same internal space that receives real music. The mind can even recreate subtle features such as rhythm, pauses, and changes in volume, all without a single wave of pressure reaching the ear. Similar activity occurs when silently rehearsing a conversation, recalling a familiar voice, or anticipating the noise of an expected event. The muscles that shape speech can show tiny adjustments as if preparing to speak aloud. This shared circuitry means that the boundary between hearing and imagining is thin. Inner sound leaves traces in the nervous system similar to those of outer sound. That is why a remembered song can be difficult to silence. Once the pattern has begun, the auditory system treats it as a genuine performance. Your brain has built-in filters that hide unnecessary information. At every moment, the senses deliver far more detail than awareness could comfortably handle. To keep perception stable, the mind uses filters that decide which signals deserve attention and which can be muted. The constant feeling of clothing against the skin, the full richness of background noise, and the continuous sensation of each breath often fade from awareness because these filters judge them unimportant for current goals. The selection is flexible. In a quiet night, the filters may open to let in the faintest sound from another room. During focused work, they may close more firmly to shield attention from distraction. These mechanisms operate before conscious thought, shaping the version of reality that awareness receives. Without them, the mind would drown in raw sensation. With them, it experiences a world that feels clear and manageable, even though much of what the senses detect never reaches the spotlight of experience. The mind can detect patterns hidden within randomness. Even when presented with sequences that appear scattered and unstructured, the mind begins to search for relationships. It compares current impressions with countless patterns stored in memory, looking for familiar rhythms, shapes, or arrangements. Sometimes this search reveals genuine structure, such as a faint trend in noisy data or a subtle habit in another person's behavior. At other times, the mind perceives order where none exists, linking coincidences into a story that feels meaningful. This constant hunt for structure fuels scientific discovery, artistic creation, and everyday intuition. It allows humans to find signals that would otherwise remain invisible and to anticipate events based on slight regularities. The same ability can also mislead, but it reflects a deep drive to transform chaos into meaning. The mind would rather find a pattern that might be wrong than accept a world that feels entirely random. Your awareness can shift without moving your eyes. Even with the gaze fixed on a single point, attention can glide through a scene like a silent searchlight. It can rest on a distant object, then slip to a texture in the foreground, then move again to the edge of the visual field, all while the eyes remain still. This internal motion changes which details are processed most carefully. Features at the center of attention grow sharper and more vivid, while others fade into gentle blur. The same shifting can occur in other senses. Awareness can lean toward the sound of distant traffic, then toward the feel of air on the skin, then toward the rhythm of the heartbeat, without any visible movement. This ability lets the mind explore its surroundings and its own body quietly, gathering information without drawing notice. Through these invisible shifts, awareness becomes a flexible instrument, capable of examining many aspects of experience in turn, while the world sees only steady eyes. Some thoughts are impossible to fully silence. Even when the mind moves toward another task, certain ideas remain active beneath awareness, continuing to influence mood, decision-making, and attention. These lingering traces appear because thought is not a clean sequence of isolated moments. Instead, it is a flowing system in which impressions echo through many layers of memory and emotional significance. A single idea can leave a residue that shifts the tone of the next idea, which then shapes the next, creating a quiet chain of influence that unfolds long after the original thought has faded. These persistent forms may soften until they feel more like a hint than a full idea. They may change shape and drift into abstract feelings rather than words. Yet they continue moving along the deep architecture of the mind, guided by past experience and the patterns that have formed over a lifetime. Attempts to force these thoughts away often strengthen them, because attention amplifies whatever it touches. Their endurance reflects the depth and complexity of mental activity, where ideas do not end simply because awareness has turned the page. They settle into hidden spaces and remain part of the ongoing landscape of the mind. The mind can change its own chemistry through expectation. Expectation sets into motion a series of internal signals that influence emotional tone, physical comfort, and readiness for challenge. When the mind anticipates relief, joy, or safety, regions responsible for regulating the body begin to adjust their activity. These regions release natural compounds that ease discomfort, promote calm, and support healing. This shift also influences heart rhythm, breath, and muscle tension, preparing the body for the outcome the mind believes is approaching. Expectation does not merely color experience, it helps create it. The same process works in the opposite direction when the mind anticipates difficulty or threat. Muscles tighten, the breath becomes shallow, and sensitivity to pain increases, even if nothing harmful has occurred. These changes reveal that thought and chemistry are entwined in constant dialogue. The mind responds to the world it predicts as strongly as the world it encounters, shaping inner experience through belief, interpretation, and meaning. This ability allows expectation to guide both emotional and physical states, long before external events unfold. Your brain constantly predicts your next move. Before a single muscle contracts, silent activity begins in regions that prepare the body for action. These regions evaluate posture, balance, and environmental cues, forming an internal guess about what movement will be useful next. This prediction unfolds automatically, drawing upon memory of past motions, recent experiences, and the subtle signals that indicate the direction of attention. Even simple actions such as standing, turning, or reaching begin as quiet patterns that form long before awareness recognizes them. These predictions help the body move with fluidity and accuracy, reducing hesitation and maintaining stability. They also allow fast adjustments when the world changes unexpectedly. Without this internal forecasting, each movement would feel disjointed and uncertain, because awareness alone is too slow to manage the body in real time. Instead, the mind leans forward into the next moment, preparing actions in advance so that life unfolds with natural rhythm. Choice still plays a central role, but that choice rests upon a foundation of predictions that keep the body ready for whatever the next moment may require. The mind creates emotional echoes that last long after events end. An experience that carries strong meaning does not simply fade when the moment is over. Instead, it leaves behind patterns that continue to influence emotion, thought, and perception. These echoes arise because the mind is still processing the event long after the external world has moved on. Networks that evaluate meaning revisit fragments of the experience, strengthening certain pathways and weakening others. This continued activity shapes mood in subtle ways. A joyful moment may cast a warm glow over unrelated experiences later in the day, while a stressful moment may leave a trace of tension that colors ordinary interactions. These echoes serve an important purpose. They allow the mind to extract lessons, recognize patterns, and prepare for similar situations in the future. They also help integrate new information into the broader structure of memory. Although these lingering tones may feel mysterious, they reflect a deep and ongoing work of emotional understanding. The moment ends, but its influence continues to travel through the mind like ripples on a still lake. Your sense of taste is shaped more by your mind than your tongue. The tongue can detect only a small set of basic sensations, yet the full experience of taste feels rich, complex, and deeply personal. This richness emerges because the mind blends signals from smell, memory, expectation, temperature, and texture into a unified impression. Before the first bite, the appearance of food can already influence how it will taste, guiding the mind to anticipate sweetness, bitterness, or comfort. A familiar aroma may unlock old memories that enhance the flavor. A shift in emotion can make the same food feel soothing one day and dull the next. Even cultural associations shape how tastes are interpreted, lending meaning to certain ingredients or combinations. This weaving of sensory and emotional information creates a world of flavor far greater than the physical signals alone. As a result, taste becomes a story that the mind tells itself, drawing upon experience, preference, and imagination to create something uniquely vivid. The mind can transform physical pain with meaning. Pain begins with signals from the body, yet the intensity and character of those signals depend greatly on the interpretation the mind applies. When discomfort is understood as purposeful, the experience can shift dramatically. Effort associated with training or healing may feel strengthening rather than threatening. Even significant strain can become more bearable when framed as progress toward a valued goal. Meaning shapes how pain travels through neural pathways, either amplifying it or softening it. Emotional context matters as well. Fear can sharpen the sensation, while trust or determination can reduce it. Attention influences the experience too. When the mind focuses fully on pain, the sensation can grow louder. When the mind places it within a larger purpose, the sensation can quiet down. Through interpretation, memory, and emotional tone, the mind becomes an active participant in shaping pain rather than a passive receiver. Meaning becomes a powerful tool that can change how the body feels. Your brain can hear with your skin under certain conditions. Vibration travels easily through surfaces, and the skin contains sensitive receptors that detect these patterns. When vibration carries the structure of sound, the mind can interpret it as information similar to hearing. Musicians often feel rhythm through their instruments, sensing timing and intensity without relying entirely on the ears. People near powerful speakers feel the texture of sound through the body long before the ears register the full detail. These vibrations enter networks that collaborate with the auditory system, enriching perception through an additional channel. This process becomes stronger when hearing is limited or when attention heightens awareness of subtle tactile signals. The blending of sound and touch reveals that hearing is not restricted to one sense. It is a collaboration across systems that together create a deeper understanding of the world. Through this partnership, the mind gathers information from many directions, even when one sense alone cannot provide the full picture. The mind adds color to your perceptions in more ways than vision alone. Color in the world is shaped by light, but the experience of color is shaped by the mind. Emotional states can brighten or dull hues. Memory can associate certain colors with warmth, danger, calm, or celebration. Context can shift how a color is perceived, causing the same shade to appear different depending on its surroundings. The mind also works to maintain consistency as lighting changes, adjusting interpretation so that familiar objects keep their expected appearance. Beyond vision, the mind uses symbolic associations that give colors emotional meaning. A blue sky may feel peaceful not simply because of its hue, but because of the memories and sensations linked to open air. A red object may appear energizing or urgent due to learned patterns. These influences blend into a single experience that feels effortless, but is constructed through many layers of interpretation. Color becomes not only something seen, but something felt and understood. Your brain sometimes decides before you feel you have chosen. Deep networks begin shaping decisions long before the moment reaches conscious clarity. These networks draw upon past experience, emotional tone, subtle cues, and learned patterns to tilt the mind toward one choice over another. By the time awareness arrives, much of the groundwork has already been laid. The decision may appear sudden, yet it emerges from layers of activity that have been preparing the mind for action. This early preparation does not remove agency. Instead, it supports quick responses by reducing hesitation and narrowing possibilities in advance. Conscious thought then steps in to refine, adjust, or redirect the unfolding choice. The feeling of deciding becomes the final moment in a long chain of hidden evaluation. This process reveals the remarkable depth of the mind, where decisions grow quietly before rising into awareness. The mind can merge senses into one unified experience. Sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste are collected as separate streams, yet the mind blends them into a single fluid moment. This integration allows a sound to feel sharper because a movement was seen, or a texture to feel warmer because a familiar aroma was present. The blending supports navigation, recognition, emotional understanding, and memory. Without it, the world would break into scattered fragments rather than a coherent whole. The integration unfolds automatically, influenced by patterns learned throughout life. Each sense enriches the others, creating experiences that feel complete. This unifying process reveals the mind not as a passive observer, but as an active composer that weaves many signals into the living fabric of a moment. Your internal monologue is only one of many voices your mind can use. Beneath the familiar stream of inner speech, other forms of thought operate with their own rhythms, textures, and languages. The internal monologue is simply the easiest to notice because it wraps itself in words, creating a sense of clarity and continuity that feels natural. Yet there are moments when thinking shifts into imagery, creating moving scenes that unfold without any linguistic structure. Other times, thought takes the shape of emotion, a rising warmth or a tightening tension that conveys meaning without ever becoming a sentence. Some thoughts appear as spatial arrangements, like mental diagrams that guide understanding of relationships and sequences. Others arrive as intuitive impressions that feel complete without explanation, offering direction or insight before awareness has had time to construct reasons. These alternate voices operate continually, shaping decisions, memories, and interpretations long before spoken thought steps in to translate them. The internal monologue often claims credit for all thinking because it narrates the results, but it rarely works alone. Beneath its steady rhythm, countless hidden processes contribute ideas, evaluate possibilities, and coordinate patterns that language simply reports after the fact. The mind is a chorus, not a single voice, and most of its music lives beyond the reach of words. The mind stores memories in scattered fragments. When an experience is recorded, the mind does not place it into a single container that can be retrieved intact. Instead, it distributes the pieces across many regions, each responsible for a different aspect of the moment. A sound may be stored in one area, an emotion in another, a visual detail elsewhere, and a physical sensation in yet another network entirely. These fragments remain linked through patterns of activity that reignite when a memory is recalled. The mind then reconstructs the experience, assembling the pieces into a cohesive event. Because this rebuilding depends on present context, emotional tone, and all the associations that have formed since the event occurred, memories can shift slightly each time they return. This flexibility allows the mind to integrate new insights, refine understanding, and strengthen meaning. It also explains why memories feel vivid, yet remain open to gentle reshaping. The scattered architecture ensures that memories stay dynamic, adapting as the person grows. Far from being flaws, these shifting reconstructions allow experience to remain alive within the mind, influencing the present in ways that a fixed recording never could. Your thoughts can influence your immune system. The networks that shape emotion and interpretation have quiet pathways into the systems that defend the body. When the mind believes that safety, comfort, or support is present, signals spread through hormonal routes that calm inflammation, stabilize internal rhythms, and prepare cells for restorative processes. Hope, determination, and trust can create a gentle internal environment in which the immune system works with steadier efficiency. The opposite effect appears when fear, uncertainty, or prolonged stress settles into the mind. These states signal potential threat, shifting the body into a protective mode that prepares for immediate challenge but slows longer-term maintenance. The immune system becomes tuned to the emotional landscape, responding not only to physical conditions, but also to the meaning the mind assigns to them. Even brief thoughts can influence this balance because the brain responds to imagined circumstances with nearly the same urgency it applies to real ones. This deep connection reveals that the boundaries between mind and body are not rigid. They respond to one another continually, shaping health as a single coordinated system. The mind can experience pleasure without any external source. Pleasure often arrives through the senses, yet the mind can generate it independently by activating the same networks that respond to comforting touch, beautiful sound, or joyful connection. Imagination can recreate a moment of belonging, success, or serenity with such vividness that the body responds with softening muscles, deepened breath, and warmth spreading through the chest. Memory can summon sensations that feel alive even though the world outside remains unchanged. Anticipation can stir quiet waves of satisfaction long before the desired event occurs, revealing that pleasure does not depend solely on circumstance. The mind constructs its own pathways to comfort, drawing on patterns learned across a lifetime. Even acts of reflection, creativity, or understanding can awaken these internal signals. This inner capacity allows the mind to find sweetness in stillness, meaning in solitude, and gentle reward in moments of insight. Pleasure becomes not only a reaction to the world, but also a creation that rises from within. Your brain builds shortcuts that speed up thinking. As life unfolds, the mind encounters patterns that repeat. With each repetition, it learns to identify the essential features while ignoring unnecessary detail. This process gradually forms internal shortcuts that allow recognition, understanding, and reaction to occur far more quickly than conscious analysis ever could. These shortcuts support everything from reading and conversation to movement, navigation, and emotional understanding. They allow the mind to leap to conclusions that are often accurate because they are built on years of accumulated experience. Yet these shortcuts do not remain fixed. They continue to refine themselves, strengthening paths that prove useful and weakening those that lead to confusion. Through this ongoing adjustment, the mind becomes more efficient without sacrificing adaptability. These hidden mechanisms make thought feel effortless, while performing extraordinary feats of compression and prediction beneath the surface. The mind can detect danger before you consciously notice it. Deep below awareness, the mind evaluates subtle cues that hint at potential threat. A shift in posture, a change in tone, a movement at the edge of vision, or an unfamiliar pattern in the environment can trigger early signals that something deserves attention. These signals arise from networks shaped by past experience and ancestral memory, designed to recognize risk long before deliberate thought can weigh possibilities. The body may tense, the breath may quicken, or attention may sharpen without any clear reason. Conscious awareness often arrives after the reaction has already begun, piecing together a story that explains the sudden shift. This rapid vigilance allows the mind to act as a guardian that quietly scans the world for meaning. It does not wait for certainty. It responds to possibility, offering a margin of safety that has supported human survival across countless generations. Imagination can trigger real physical changes in the body. When the mind constructs a vivid internal scene, the body responds as if the event were unfolding in reality. Imagined exertion can elevate the pulse. Imagined comfort can slow the breath. Imagined danger can tighten muscles and sharpen focus. These reactions arise because the systems that interpret the world respond to meaning rather than to physical input alone. Imagination provides meaning with remarkable clarity, activating internal pathways that prepare the body for action, rest, or transformation. This ability supports learning and adaptation. Athletes refine skills through mental rehearsal. Artists feel emotional shifts while picturing their work. People preparing for difficult conversations practice responses internally, shaping their emotional readiness long before speaking. The body listens to the stories the mind tells, adjusting itself in ways that reveal a profound unity between thought and physiology. The mind uses mental models to forecast the behavior of others. When interacting with people, the mind constructs quiet predictions that help anticipate thoughts, intentions, and emotional states. These models draw upon expression, movement, tone, memory, and intuition, weaving them into a sense of what someone might do next. The models shift as new information arrives, continually recalibrating to match the unfolding moment. This ability allows conversation to flow smoothly, supports cooperation, and helps avoid misunderstanding. It also plays a powerful role in empathy, enabling the mind to feel the emotional weight of another person's experience. These models are not mere guesses. They are built from patterns learned over a lifetime and updated through every social encounter. Through them, the mind becomes an interpreter of human complexity, navigating relationships with a blend of perception, memory, and imagination. Your attention can act like a spotlight that alters perception. Attention focuses the mind's resources on a chosen element of experience, intensifying its clarity while softening the world around it. When attention settles on a detail, colors can appear richer, textures more intricate, and sounds more defined. At the same time, unattended elements fade into gentle obscurity, creating the impression that the chosen detail is brighter, or more important than it objectively is. This shifting spotlight allows the mind to explore scenes without moving the eyes or body, highlighting what matters in the moment. It shapes emotion as well, amplifying certain feelings while allowing others to drift into the background. The spotlight does not simply illuminate, it transforms. By selecting a single thread of experience, attention weaves the fabric of the moment. The mind can relive an experience with microscopic detail. When a memory holds strong emotional weight or deep personal meaning, the mind can reconstruct it with extraordinary richness. The sound of a voice, the warmth of sunlight, the particular rhythm of footsteps, or the feeling of a certain air can return with startling clarity. These reconstructions arise because the original experience was stored in many interconnected fragments, each capturing a different aspect of the moment. When the memory is recalled, these fragments ignite in coordinated patterns, creating a vivid internal scene. The mind does not simply replay the event. It rebuilds it, gathering detail from stored sensory impressions, emotional records, and learned associations. This reconstruction can feel so complete that it temporarily blurs the boundary between present and past. Through visibility, the mind preserves the essence of meaningful experiences, allowing them to return in forms that feel alive rather than distant. Some memories are stored so deeply that you cannot access them intentionally. Deep within the architecture of the mind, certain experiences become woven into layers that rarely rise into awareness. These memories are not lost. They remain active, influencing emotion, behavior, and interpretation even though they cannot be summoned by deliberate effort. Some of these hidden memories formed during early life, when the mind recorded impressions without the structure of language. Others were shaped during moments of intensity when the mind focused on survival rather than reflection, storing fragments in regions that do not easily communicate with conscious thought. These deep memories can still guide reactions, causing sudden feelings of comfort, unease, recognition, or caution, without offering any explanation for their presence. In certain circumstances, a smell, sound, or movement can bring these dormant impressions close enough to awareness that they create a surge of emotion or clarity. Yet even then, they rarely unfold as complete stories. Instead, they emerge as sensations, impulses, or fleeting impressions that hint at a history the mind can feel but not fully describe. Their influence shows that memory is not a single system but a layered landscape, where some experiences remain forever beyond direct reach while continuing to shape the person you become. The mind can mask emotional responses even from yourself. Emotional signals begin deep within the body, rising through networks that interpret meaning, evaluate context, and guide reaction. Yet these signals do not always reach awareness in their original form. The mind may soften them, redirect them, or convert them into different sensations to protect stability. Sometimes a feeling of sadness transforms into restlessness. Sometimes anger becomes a need for quiet. Sometimes fear appears only as tension in the shoulders or a shift in breath. These transformations allow the mind to maintain focus in situations where acknowledging the full emotion might overwhelm or disrupt important tasks. Over time, these protective patterns can become so familiar that the original emotion rarely surfaces directly. The mind learns to reshape experience in ways that maintain balance, even at the cost of clarity. These hidden responses are not signs of avoidance. They are strategies developed across a lifetime, influenced by culture, memory, and personal history. They reveal the incredible flexibility of emotional processing, where the mind sometimes conceals its own signals in order to preserve harmony. Your brain holds unspoken knowledge you cannot describe. Many skills and insights operate beneath the level of language, guiding behavior with quiet precision. You may recognize a familiar face instantly without being able to explain how. You may sense the mood of a room before anyone speaks. You may navigate a complex environment with ease, even though you cannot describe the rules that make it possible. This unspoken knowledge forms through repetition, observation, and subtle learning that occurs without conscious intention. The mind builds patterns from countless small details, linking them into structures that guide action automatically. These patterns evolve over time, becoming more refined as new experiences reinforce or reshape them. Because they do not rely on language, they cannot be fully expressed through words, yet they remain deeply accurate and reliable. They represent the mind's ability to learn without instruction, to grasp meaning without explanation, and to act with wisdom formed from accumulation rather than reasoning. This silent knowledge is one of the mind's most powerful tools, carrying understanding that awareness might never be able to articulate. The mind uses stories to help you understand the world. Human experience is filled with scattered details, shifting emotions, and unpredictable events. To make sense of this complexity, the mind weaves information into narrative form. These stories combine memory, expectation, interpretation, and emotion into coherent patterns that explain what has happened and what might come next. Even simple moments become easier to comprehend when placed within a storyline that gives them structure. The mind uses these narratives to assign meaning, establish identity, and create continuity through time. They help transform confusion into clarity and conflict into growth. Yet these stories are not fixed. They change as new experiences reshape understanding. A difficult event may take on a different meaning years later, when the mind revisits it with greater knowledge. A moment that once felt ordinary may become significant when placed within a broader personal history. Through storytelling, the mind brings order to the shifting world within and around you, creating a bridge between perception and interpretation. Your brain constantly negotiates between logic and instinct. Within every moment of thought, rational analysis and intuitive reaction operate side by side. Logical pathways evaluate evidence, consider possibilities, and weigh consequences with deliberate care. Instinctive pathways respond quickly, shaped by memory, emotion, and ancestral patterns that once ensured survival. These two systems do not compete as much as they collaborate. Instinct provides speed and direction when time is limited, while logic refines decisions when reflection becomes possible. The mind continually balances these influences, allowing one to take the lead depending on context. In moments of calm, logical reasoning guides choices with careful structure. In moments of urgency, instinct takes over to protect the body before danger becomes clear. This negotiation forms a dynamic partnership where each system supports the other. Understanding emerges not from logic alone, but from the interplay between fast intuition and slow deliberation, creating decisions that are both grounded and adaptive. The mind notices far more than it reports. Throughout the day, countless details pass through attention without becoming part of awareness. The mind registers subtle movements, faint sounds, shifts in posture, changes in temperature, and countless other signals that never rise into conscious thought. These unnoticed impressions still guide interpretation and behavior. A slight change in a person's expression may influence trust. A soft sound behind you may shift posture without explanation. Even patterns in the environment are gathered silently, helping the mind form predictions that feel like intuition. Awareness represents only a small portion of the information the mind processes. The rest occurs automatically, creating a foundation of understanding that supports every moment of life. This hidden monitoring offers speed, safety, and stability, allowing conscious thought to focus on what matters most, while the deeper layers maintain constant vigilance. Your sense of identity can drift without you realizing. Identity feels stable, yet it is shaped by a continuous flow of experience, emotion, and reinterpretation. Each new event adds to the internal narrative, strengthening certain beliefs while softening others. Over time, these shifts create subtle adjustments in how you understand yourself. The drift may be gentle, unfolding across years, or more pronounced during periods of change. Often the shift is noticeable only in hindsight, when you realize that your values, motivations, or sense of purpose have transformed. The mind revises identity by integrating new insights, releasing outdated assumptions, and adapting to challenges that reshape perspective. This quiet evolution allows the self to remain flexible rather than fixed, capable of growth in response to both joy and difficulty. Identity becomes not a static artifact, but a living process that changes as understanding deepens. The mind forms attachments faster than you expect. When encountering a new person, place, or object, the mind rapidly evaluates emotional tone, familiarity, and potential meaning. Even brief interactions can create soft connections that influence future perception. A comforting presence may feel trustworthy after only a single moment. A place that evokes calm may feel like home long before it becomes familiar. These attachments form because the mind prioritizes emotional relevance, building pathways that help identify safety, belonging, and potential companionship. The speed of this process reflects ancient patterns that favored quick bonding in uncertain environments. These early attachments may strengthen through repeated experience or fade naturally if meaning shifts. Yet their formation reveals that connection is not solely the result of long history. It can begin in an instant, carried by emotion, memory, and instinct working together. Your brain responds to symbols even when you ignore them. Symbols carry layers of meaning that the mind processes automatically. A shape, color, gesture, or arrangement may evoke patterns learned across a lifetime, guiding interpretation without requiring conscious attention. Even when the symbol goes unnoticed, the mind evaluates it, connecting it to associations rooted in culture, memory, or personal experience. This reaction can influence emotion, expectation, or trust before awareness identifies the reason. The mind absorbs symbolic information quickly because symbols compress meaning into simple forms. They allow rapid understanding in complex situations and help structure perception of the world. These automatic responses operate quietly, shaping thought and behavior through impressions that work beneath awareness. The mind can sense social information without awareness. During interactions, the mind gathers countless cues that reveal emotion, intention, hierarchy, and connection. Many of these cues are subtle, appearing in posture, tone, timing, or facial movement. Even when awareness does not register these details, the deeper layers of the mind respond, adjusting trust, curiosity, caution, or warmth. This ability allows social understanding to unfold quickly, long before deliberate reasoning steps in. It supports cooperation, protects from danger, and fosters empathy by detecting patterns that language may not convey. These hidden perceptions help navigate complex social landscapes with intuition shaped by experience and memory. Through them, the mind reads the world without needing to explain how it knows what it knows. Your thoughts can alter the rhythm of your heart. The heart responds to the mind with remarkable sensitivity, adjusting its tempo in quiet harmony with shifting emotional states and patterns of interpretation. When the mind experiences calm, the rhythm gradually softens, allowing breath and circulation to settle into a slower, steadier flow. When anticipation rises, the heart may begin to move with subtle quickness, even before a clear emotion forms. Thoughts of challenge or uncertainty can tighten the chest and create a gentle acceleration, while reflections on comfort or connection can ease tension, and guide the rhythm toward spaciousness. These changes occur because emotional and cognitive networks send signals to the body that modify the balance between tension and relaxation. Even imagined situations can influence this rhythm, demonstrating that the heart listens not only to the external world, but to the stories, predictions, and meanings created within the mind. This responsiveness reveals an intimate partnership in which thought shapes physiology, and physiology in turn shapes the tone of future thought. Through this continual exchange, the rhythm of the heart becomes a living reflection of the mind's inner landscape. The mind mirrors the emotions of others automatically. When observing another person's expression or posture, the mind begins to recreate a faint internal version of their emotion. This occurs even before awareness identifies the feeling, allowing the mind to grasp the emotional tone of a situation with impressive speed. Subtle shifts in a voice may awaken quiet echoes within the listener, encouraging understanding through shared resonance. A moment of joy can create a spark of warmth, while a moment of sorrow can stir a gentle heaviness, even without conscious intention. These internal reflections arise from deeply rooted networks shaped by social learning across a lifetime. They allow the mind to sense the needs of others, adjust responses, and maintain harmony within groups. This automatic mirroring also strengthens connection, creating a bridge of shared experience that supports empathy. The process does not require analysis. It unfolds naturally, blending perception and emotion into a single movement. Through this mirroring, the mind participates in the emotional world around it, absorbing signals that help guide behavior, compassion, and understanding. Your brain searches for meaning in every experience. Even the simplest moment contains layers of detail, and the mind works constantly to uncover patterns that explain what is happening and why it matters. When encountering new information, it sifts through memory, prediction, and expectation to find structure. A faint sound may prompt curiosity. A shift in light may spark interpretation, and a gesture may awaken emotional significance. This search for meaning helps transform scattered sensations into understandable events, guiding attention toward themes that support learning and stability. The mind is not content with randomness. It draws connections between separate impressions, linking them into coherent units that shape understanding. These patterns become the framework through which future experiences are interpreted, creating a cycle in which meaning builds upon meaning. Even in unfamiliar situations, the search continues, allowing the mind to build new structures that expand awareness. This ongoing process reveals a deep desire to find purpose within complexity, turning raw experience into a form that supports insight, memory, and choice. The mind can develop entirely new skills through observation alone. When watching someone perform an action, the mind activates networks that reflect the movements and intentions being observed. These internal activations serve as a rehearsal, preparing pathways that would be used if the action were performed directly. Through repeated observation, these pathways strengthen, creating a foundation upon which skill can grow even without physical practice. The mind begins to anticipate sequences, refine timing, and understand the structure of the activity. Emotional engagement can enhance this process, especially when the observer feels curiosity or admiration. The body may subtly mimic elements of the observed action, reinforcing learning through quiet internal repetition. Over time, these hidden rehearsals allow the mind to gain familiarity with a skill long before the body attempts it. This ability demonstrates that learning does not depend solely on action. It arises from perception, imagination, and internal simulation working together to create possibilities that can later unfold into physical ability. Your memories of childhood are reconstructed rather than stored. Early experiences often exist within the mind as scattered impressions shaped before language, logic, or clear identity had fully developed. When recalling these moments, the mind draws upon fragments of sensation, emotion, and environmental detail, weaving them together into a narrative that feels whole even though it is assembled anew. These reconstructions rely not only on stored impressions, but also on current understanding, cultural influences, and the emotional tone present during the act of remembering. Over time, the reconstructions shift, slowly adopting the frameworks and meanings developed through maturity. A simple childhood moment may later gain symbolic weight, while another may fade into softened ambiguity. This changing nature does not mean the memories are false. It means they remain alive, adapting to the person who remembers them. Childhood recollection becomes a conversation between past and present, revealing the mind's capacity to create coherence from fragments and meaning from memory's quiet foundation. The mind perceives silence as a form of information. Silence is not experienced as emptiness. Instead, the mind treats it as a meaningful presence that guides interpretation, emotion, and attention. In moments without sound, the mind becomes more sensitive to internal rhythms, subtle sensations, and faint environmental cues. Silence can highlight tension or create calm depending on the context in which it appears. It can reveal shifts in mood, the presence of expectation, or the weight of unspoken meaning between people. The absence of sound allows hidden patterns to emerge, making silence a container for insight rather than a void. Within this quiet space, thoughts may unfurl more clearly, and feelings may rise to the surface with gentle precision. The mind listens to silence as carefully as it listens to speech, recognizing that its presence shapes understanding in ways that words cannot. Through silence, the mind discovers depth within stillness and meaning within the spaces between sound. Your brain can generate creativity from random noise. Creativity often begins with fragments that appear without structure, rising from background activity that flickers constantly beneath awareness. The mind samples this internal noise, combining stray impressions, half-formed ideas, emotional tones, and unexpected associations into new configurations. These combinations may seem spontaneous, yet they reflect the mind's remarkable ability to extract possibility from uncertainty. When the mind allows itself to wander, it creates space for these fragments to collide in ways that produce insight. Emotional openness can further support this process, enabling the mind to experiment with ideas that might otherwise be dismissed. Over time, these fragments can form patterns that grow into creative expression, whether through problem-solving, art, or personal insight. Creativity arises not only from intention, but from the mind's willingness to explore the unstructured landscape of its own activity, gathering meaning from places where none was expected. The mind predicts what you will see before you open your eyes. Long before vision engages, the mind forms expectations based on memory, environment, and recent experience. These predictions shape how the world appears when the eyes finally gather light, guiding attention toward familiar structures and preparing interpretation before sensory information arrives. If the mind anticipates safety, the world may appear warm and open. If it anticipates uncertainty, the world may seem sharper and more fragmented. This early preparation allows perception to unfold with speed and coherence, reducing the effort required to understand the moment. Even small details such as the direction of light or the layout of a room may be constructed in advance. This predictive process demonstrates that perception is not a passive reception of the world. It is an active creation shaped by the mind's understanding of what is likely to appear. Your sense of time depends on emotional intensity. Time feels elastic because the mind measures it through experience rather than through any external rhythm. Moments filled with strong emotion may feel stretched, expanding to contain every detail. Calm moments may glide by effortlessly, leaving only a soft impression. When the mind becomes deeply engaged, time may seem to disappear entirely, merging into a single flow of focus. These changes occur because the mind allocates attention differently depending on emotional tone. Strong emotion increases the density of memory, making a short moment feel long when recalled. Gentle emotion reduces that density, allowing longer periods to feel brief. Time becomes a reflection of how fully the mind participates in a moment, revealing that the inner world shapes the passage of time far more than the clock outside ever could. The mind can maintain multiple conflicting ideas at once. Within the complex landscape of thought, the mind can hold opposing beliefs, feelings, or interpretations simultaneously without forcing immediate resolution. This ability allows nuanced understanding, supporting growth by accommodating uncertainty rather than rejecting it. Conflicting ideas may represent different layers of experience, each carrying its own form of truth. One idea may arise from logic, another from emotion, another from intuition shaped by memory. Instead of choosing immediately between them, the mind can let them coexist while gathering context that may later clarify the situation. This coexistence encourages flexibility, allowing thought to evolve rather than collapse into premature certainty. It reflects a sophisticated form of mental balance, in which contradiction becomes a source of insight rather than confusion. Your brain has hidden rhythms that shape your behavior. Within the mind, countless waves of electrical activity rise and fall in patterns that guide the flow of thought, long before awareness notices anything has shifted. These rhythms change the way different regions communicate, creating windows of sensitivity during which signals travel more easily, and moments of quiet during which the mind turns inward to integrate experience. When the rhythms align, concentration becomes effortless, memory strengthens, and emotional tone steadies. When they drift apart, thought may feel cloudy or unfocused, even though the world has not changed. These patterns shift naturally across the day, influenced by environment, intention, rest, and internal meaning. Some support deep reflection, while others prepare the mind for creativity or fast reaction. They work silently beneath the surface, creating the internal climate in which experience unfolds. Although hidden, they shape the quality of each moment, giving thought its pace, coherence, and emotional color. They are a quiet architecture that guides behavior by setting the conditions in which the mind can thrive. The mind can transform ordinary moments into profound ones. At any moment, the familiar world can take on unexpected depth when attention, memory, and emotion align. A simple view may become beautiful when a shift in light awakens a forgotten feeling. A brief interaction may carry unusual weight when it stirs something long resting within the mind. These changes do not come from the external world alone. They arise from the way the mind weaves new meaning from subtle impressions. A scent may unlock a long, quiet memory. A familiar sound may echo with significance because of something learned earlier that day. Even routine actions can unfold into quiet insight when the mind pauses long enough to notice the texture of the present. Meaning gathers from many directions, and when those directions converge, an ordinary moment opens like a doorway into reflection or awe. This ability reveals that the depth of life is not limited by circumstance. It depends on the mind's capacity to draw richness from small, unassuming things. Your internal world is far more complex than your external one. Inside the mind exists a landscape of thought, memory, imagination, and emotion that intertwines in ways the outside world could never fully mirror. A single moment of reflection may awaken layers of interpretation shaped by history, hope, and countless subtle impressions that have accumulated over years. Ideas branch into possibilities that never appear in the physical world, yet feel vivid and meaningful. Memories shift each time they are recalled, mixing present understanding with fragments of the past. Emotions bring depth to experience, coloring interpretation with warmth, unease, clarity, or longing. The internal world also contains imagined futures, symbolic meanings, and personal narratives that evolve with each new discovery. Even silence is filled with activity, as the mind organizes, evaluates, and predicts long before any action is taken. This complexity explains why two people can share the same environment but inhabit profoundly different experiences. The world inside the mind is a vast and intricate realm shaped by perception, belief, and possibility. The mind can influence the perception of temperature. Although temperature begins as a physical sensation, the mind plays a powerful role in shaping how warmth or cold is interpreted. Expectation can alter the moment before the body even makes contact. A warm memory may soften the experience of a cool breeze, while a tense state may make mild heat feel heavy and uncomfortable. Visual cues also influence perception, allowing colors, lighting, and context to change the feeling of temperature long before the skin receives any signal. Emotional tone adds another layer, making warmth feel nurturing during moments of comfort or overwhelming during moments of stress. Past experiences can create associations that influence how temperature is understood, causing the same degree of warmth or cold to feel entirely different depending on mood and memory. Through these combined influences, temperature becomes a blended experience rather than a single physical signal. The mind interprets sensation through meaning and context, creating a temperature that reflects both body and thought. Your brain creates phantom sensations after changes in the body. Even when the body undergoes significant alteration, the brain may continue producing sensations that no longer have a physical source. This happens because the mind maintains an internal model of the body built on expectation rather than constant measurement. When that model no longer matches reality, the mind still generates the sensations it believes should be present. These feelings may appear as pressure, movement, warmth, or tingling in places that no longer send signals. They are not imagined. They arise from neural pathways that were once active and remain ready to respond. Over time, new experiences can reshape the internal map, but this process requires patience, repetition, and new patterns of sensation. Phantom sensations reveal the depth of the mind's predictive nature. Perception is not simply the body reporting to the brain. It is the brain interpreting the world according to an internal design that sometimes lingers beyond the physical source. The mind can invent memories that feel completely real. Memory is recreated each time it is recalled, and this reconstruction opens space for the mind to add details that fit the emotional or narrative shape of the event. These added elements may come from imagination, related experiences, or suggestions absorbed over time. Once woven into the memory, they merge so seamlessly that they feel as authentic as any original detail. The mind does this not to distort the truth, but to maintain coherence and meaning. When fragments are incomplete, it fills the gaps in ways that preserve the story of personal identity. Emotional tone often guides these additions, ensuring that the memory matches how the moment felt, even if some details never happened. Over years, the memory may shift again, adopting new layers that reflect growth or change. Through this process, memory becomes a living system rather than a fixed record. Invented details blend with genuine ones to create a narrative that feels deeply true because it reflects the mind's attempt to create continuity. Your intuition draws from information you cannot consciously access. Intuition emerges when hidden layers of the mind recognize patterns too subtle or complex for deliberate thought to analyze. Beneath awareness, the brain continually gathers impressions from facial expression, posture, atmosphere, tone, timing, and countless other signals that never rise into conscious focus. These impressions accumulate into meaningful patterns that the mind evaluates with remarkable speed. When the pattern becomes strong enough, it produces a feeling of certainty, caution, or curiosity, but seems to appear without explanation. This sensation is the final product of a vast internal process that connects memory, emotion, prediction, and experience. Intuition is not guesswork. It is quick, efficient understanding, produced by networks that operate beyond awareness. When it speaks, it reflects a form of knowledge that the conscious mind has not yet translated into words. The mind uses anticipation to shape experience. Before any moment unfolds, the mind begins shaping it through expectation. These expectations influence emotion, attention, and even physical readiness. A hopeful anticipation may create softness and openness that brighten perception. A fearful anticipation may create tension that colors every detail with unease. Anticipation also guides where attention settles, determining which elements of the moment feel important and which fade into the background. As a result, experience becomes a mixture of what occurs and what the mind prepared itself to find. This shaping effect is subtle yet powerful, influencing whether an event feels joyful, challenging, or neutral. It reveals that the mind does not simply react to the world. It prepares the world in advance, creating a framework through which reality is interpreted. Through anticipation, the mind becomes a quiet architect of experience. Your brain can form new pathways throughout your entire life. The mind is constantly reshaping itself, building new connections and refining old ones to support learning, adaptation, and emotional growth. When encountering something unfamiliar, neurons begin forming pathways that allow understanding to take shape. These pathways strengthen through repetition, making thought faster and more efficient as experience accumulates. Even later in life, the mind retains this flexibility, creating networks that support new skills, new perspectives, and new forms of resilience. Emotional experience can accelerate this process, helping the mind reorganize itself in response to significant change. This ability reveals that the brain is never fixed in its structure. It is a living system, continually responding to the challenges and discoveries that shape a lifetime. Growth remains possible as long as new experience continues to touch the mind. The mind can experience awe without any external trigger. Awe often arises in the presence of something vast or beautiful, yet the mind can summon the same depth of feeling in complete stillness. Reflection on existence, imagination of distant possibilities, or contemplation of deeply meaningful ideas can create a sensation of expansion that fills the mind with quiet wonder. This internal awe appears when thought reaches towards something larger than ordinary understanding. The mind recognizes patterns or possibilities that stretch beyond the familiar, awakening a feeling of connection to something greater. No landscape or spectacle is required. The sense of vastness emerges from the mind's own ability to explore meaning. Through this inner movement, awe becomes a natural expression of thought itself, rather than a reaction to external grandeur. Your thoughts can change how your genes are expressed. Thoughts influence the body far more deeply than the surface of awareness suggests. Beneath every moment of reflection lies a network of chemical pathways that respond to emotional tone, expectation, and interpretation. When the mind enters a state of calm, pathways supporting restoration and resilience become more active, allowing certain genes to express themselves more strongly while others quiet down. When worry, fear, or strain take hold, a different group of biological signals rises, preparing the body for short-term survival, but slowing the systems that maintain long-term health. This interplay does not alter the structure of genes, but it changes which ones are encouraged to speak and which ones fall silent. Even imagination can influence this balance when the mind responds to imagined comfort or threat with the same intensity it would apply to physical experience. These shifts unfold quietly, guiding energy, immunity, inflammation, and recovery. Through this ongoing conversation between thought and biology, the mind becomes a powerful sculptor of internal life, shaping the body in ways that stretch far beyond conscious understanding. The mind constructs reality using prediction rather than passive observation. Perception begins long before the eyes gather light or the ears register sound. Deep networks within the mind constantly generate predictions about what the world is likely to present, drawing upon memory, emotion, and every pattern ever learned. When sensory information arrives, the mind compares it against these predictions, filling gaps, smoothing inconsistencies, and adjusting interpretation to create a coherent picture. As a result, experience is not a simple reflection of the outside world. It is a merging of expectation and input that often favors what the mind believes should be present over what is actually there. This process unfolds with incredible speed, allowing perception to feel continuous and stable, even though the world is full of ambiguity. Prediction helps the mind navigate uncertainty by creating a framework within which meaning can form. Without it, perception would be overwhelming chaos, filled with details the mind could not process quickly enough. Through prediction, reality becomes a story the mind writes in real time, shaped by the lessons of the past and the possibilities of the future. Your brain forms invisible habits that shape your days. As you move through life, the mind quietly creates patterns that guide behavior without announcing themselves. These patterns form whenever the brain notices repetition, efficiency, or emotional significance. Over time, neurons begin firing in predictable sequences that make certain actions feel natural and effortless. A familiar route, a familiar posture, or a familiar emotional response may become the default even when awareness does not remember choosing it. These habits can be helpful, allowing the mind to conserve energy for more complex tasks. They can also be limiting when they subtly steer behavior in directions that no longer match intention. Because these patterns operate below awareness, they often reveal themselves only through reflection or sudden change. Yet they shape the rhythm of days, influencing how decisions unfold and how emotions move through the body. These invisible habits demonstrate the mind's desire for efficiency and stability, building small, repeating paths that eventually become the foundation of daily life. The mind can build emotional landscapes that guide your choices. Emotion does not appear only in moments of intensity. It forms ongoing patterns that shape how the world feels and how choices unfold. These patterns create internal landscapes through which thought travels. A landscape shaped by curiosity may open doors without hesitation, allowing possibility to feel welcoming. A landscape shaped by caution may encourage slow movement, guiding attention towards subtle risks. These emotional terrains are built from memory, expectation, and personal meaning, expanding or narrowing the paths available at any moment. Because they live beneath conscious thought, they influence decisions quietly. A choice may feel right because the emotional landscape supports it, even if the reasoning comes later. Over time, new experiences reshape these landscapes, softening old contours and creating new pathways through which behavior can flow. The mind continually redraws its internal maps, creating emotional worlds that guide action, perception, and identity. Your perception of color can shift based on context. Color appears stable, yet the mind continually reshapes it according to lighting, emotion, memory, and expectation. When observing an object, the mind does not simply register the wavelengths striking the eye. It compares the color to everything surrounding it, adjusting interpretation to maintain consistency as light changes. A shade that appears warm in one context may appear cool in another, because the mind tries to preserve harmony between all the colors in the scene. Emotion also influences color. A bright tone may feel muted during sorrow or radiant during joy. Memory adds further complexity, linking certain hues with personal meaning. Even imagination can shift perception, inspiring the mind to see warmth where none exists or softness in a color that once felt harsh. Color becomes a negotiation between the world and the mind's desire for coherence, shaped as much by interpretation as by physical reality. The mind can create meaning from incomplete information. When presented with fragments, the mind instinctively fills gaps to create coherence. This ability evolved from the need to act quickly in uncertain conditions, when waiting for complete information could be dangerous. Today, the same tendency influences thought in subtle ways. A partial conversation may spark assumptions. A brief expression may inspire interpretation. A missing detail may be supplied by imagination without awareness of the substitution. The mind does not leave empty spaces. It populates them with possibilities drawn from memory and expectation. This process supports understanding by transforming scattered impressions into stories that feel whole. However, it also reveals how much of reality is constructed internally. Meaning is not merely found. It is created, shaped by the mind's urge to connect pieces into a unified pattern. Through this instinct, the mind turns fragments into narratives that help navigate a world filled with ambiguity. Your brain uses dreams to organize your inner world. During sleep, the mind enters a state in which memory, emotion, and imagination intertwine with unusual freedom. Events from the day mix with older impressions, forming scenes that may feel strange yet carry quiet significance. These scenes allow the mind to sort emotional residue, reinforce lessons, and explore possibilities that waking thought might resist. Dreams also help integrate new knowledge by weaving fresh information into the existing structure of memory. Even the surreal nature of dreams has purpose, allowing the mind to examine ideas without the limits of logic. Through these nightly journeys, the inner world becomes more organized, balanced, and adaptable. Although dreams may appear chaotic, they support the deep work of maintaining psychological harmony. They reveal a side of the mind that continues shaping experience even while awareness sleeps. The mind shifts between identities depending on situation. Identity feels singular, yet the mind contains many versions of the self that emerge depending on context, emotion, and expectation. A person may speak differently with a friend than with a stranger, or feel more confident in one environment than another. These shifts do not signal inconsistency. They reflect the mind's ability to draw upon different aspects of personality that best match the moment. Each version carries its own memories, motivations, and emotional tone, rising to the surface when needed and receding when the moment changes. Over time, experiences strengthen some identities and soften others, creating a flexible system that adapts to the complexities of life. Rather than being one fixed self, the mind becomes a collection of cells that express various truths. This shifting nature allows growth, resilience, and nuance, showing that identity is not a single portrait but an ever-changing collection of perspectives. Your thoughts can reshape your sense of the future. The mind forms ideas about what lies ahead based on memory, imagination, and emotional tone. When thoughts lean toward possibility, the future feels wide and open, allowing attention to seek opportunity. When thoughts lean toward fear or limitation, the future may appear narrow, even if circumstances remain unchanged. These internal predictions influence motivation, expectation, and the choices made from moment to moment. A hopeful thought can widen perspective, revealing paths that once seemed hidden. A discouraging thought can shrink perspective, obscuring options that were once clear. Over time, repeated patterns of thought sculpt the landscape of expectation, creating a sense of what the future is likely to bring. This sense then guides action, shaping life in subtle but powerful ways. Through this feedback loop, the mind becomes an artist painting the horizon with colors drawn from its own interpretation. The mind reacts to imagined threats as strongly as real ones. When the mind perceives danger, whether physical or imagined, the body responds with intensity. Heart rhythm increases, breath sharpens, and muscles tighten as ancient survival pathways prepare for action. These responses emerge even when the threat exists only in thought, because the mind does not distinguish sharply between real and symbolic danger. A troubling memory, a feared possibility, or an imagined outcome can awaken the same biological signals that respond to immediate risk. This reaction demonstrates the power of meaning over sensation. The mind treats imagined danger with seriousness because imagination can shape reality through action and emotion. While this response once protected survival, it now reveals the need for careful interpretation of internal experiences. The body listens closely to the stories the mind tells, reacting with loyalty even when the danger exists only within thought. Your creativity emerges from a balance of chaos and order. Within the mind exists a delicate interplay between structure and unpredictability that fuels the creation of new ideas. Order provides the framework that keeps thought coherent, giving memory, language, and reasoning a stable foundation. Chaos introduces the unexpected, allowing impressions to collide in unusual ways that spark novelty. When these two forces meet in harmony, creativity flourishes. The mind draws from familiar patterns, yet refuses to be limited by them, allowing imagination to stretch beyond habit. A wandering thought may drift into new territory, but the organized layers of cognition gather it, refine it, and shape it into something meaningful. Emotional tone influences this balance as well, because curiosity encourages exploration, while clarity helps weave discoveries into coherent form. When the mind leans too far toward order, ideas may feel predictable. When it leans too far toward chaos, they may dissolve before taking shape. Creativity thrives in the middle ground, where structure welcomes uncertainty, and uncertainty inspires insight. This balance allows the mind to transform fragments into visions, moments into stories, and possibilities into forms that feel entirely new. The mind can cultivate calm through repeated intention. Calm is not merely a passive state that arrives on its own. It is a condition the mind can strengthen through practice, much like a muscle that responds to steady use. When the mind focuses on relaxing the body, lengthening the breath, or releasing tension held behind thought, neural pathways that support tranquility become more active. Repeating these intentions gradually reinforces the networks that soften stress and stabilize emotion. Even brief moments of mindful attention can guide the nervous system toward balance, because the mind signals that safety has returned and the body adjusts accordingly. Over time, these repeated choices accumulate into a resilient foundation. Calm becomes easier to access, even in moments when life feels uncertain. This capacity does not erase difficulty. Instead, it builds internal strength that allows challenges to be met with clarity rather than overwhelm. Through steady intention, the mind learns to return itself to stillness, creating a refuge that grows deeper with every practice. Your brain creates mental maps of people as well as places. When forming relationships, the mind does more than remember faces and names. It builds intricate maps that represent the emotional landscape, patterns of behavior, and subtle qualities that make each person unique. These maps help predict how an interaction might unfold, guiding empathy, trust, and communication. They develop over time as the mind gathers impressions from tone, expression, gesture, and shared experience. Each new moment reshapes the map, adding detail or adjusting interpretation. These mental representations influence how comfortable or cautious you feel around someone, how deeply you connect, and how quickly misunderstanding can arise or dissolve. They are not static. They shift with change, allowing the mind to adapt as relationships evolve. Through this mapping process, the mind makes social life manageable, transforming complexity into understanding and helping you navigate the emotional world with quiet precision. The mind can become absorbed in moments so deeply that the self disappears. Certain experiences draw attention so fully that the usual sense of self falls into the background. This absorption can occur during creative work, physical activity, deep contemplation, or simple appreciation of the present moment. When it happens, thought no longer circles around identity or worry. Instead, awareness merges with the activity itself, creating a sense of flow, but feels effortless and expansive. Time may soften, emotion may quiet, and the boundaries between self and world may blur. This state arises when the mind feels challenged enough to stay engaged, but supported enough to feel safe. It brings clarity, meaning, and a sense of connection that lingers even after the moment ends. The disappearance of the self is not a loss. It is a deep alignment between attention and action, revealing the mind's ability to move beyond its usual narrative and into a more spacious form of presence. Your thoughts can echo long after you try to let them go. Some thoughts linger beneath awareness even after you believe you have dismissed them. They may soften, drift into the background, or lose their sharpness, yet they continue influencing mood, attention, and interpretation. These echoes arise because thought does not simply vanish once attention shifts. It leaves traces in emotional memory and neural activity that take time to fade. A forgotten worry may resurface as a shift in mood. A dismissed idea may later return as a moment of insight. Even a brief reflection can ripple through the mind's networks, altering perception long after the original thought has passed. This persistence reveals that thought is not an isolated event. It is part of a larger flow in which impressions gather, dissolve, and reorganize into new patterns. The echoes of thought shape the mind's terrain, influencing how the next moment feels without announcing their presence. The mind learns faster through curiosity than repetition. Curiosity awakens networks that energize attention, enhance memory, and deepen understanding. When the mind feels genuinely interested, it becomes more receptive, processing information with speed and clarity that repetition alone cannot achieve. Curiosity opens cognitive pathways that allow new ideas to link with older ones, creating connections that anchor knowledge more firmly. Emotional engagement strengthens this effect, making learning feel natural rather than forced. Repetition plays a role in mastery, but curiosity provides the spark that brings material to life. It encourages exploration, experimentation, and the willingness to revisit concepts from new angles. When curiosity leads, learning becomes an active journey rather than a task. This internal motivation amplifies insight, allowing the mind to absorb nuance, pattern, and meaning that would otherwise be missed. Through curiosity, learning becomes a dynamic process shaped by wonder rather than obligation. Your brain can revive forgotten skills when triggered by emotion. There are moments when a long-neglected ability suddenly returns, as if awakened from sleep. This revival often occurs when emotion stirs networks linked to experiences of the past. A familiar sound, a meaningful gesture, or a rush of feeling can reactivate pathways that have remained quiet for years. These pathways rebuild themselves quickly because the mind retains structural traces of old skills even when they appear forgotten. Emotion acts as a key that unlocks these dormant circuits, allowing the skill to rise once more into awareness. The return may feel effortless, surprising, or deeply nostalgic. It demonstrates that memory is not limited to facts and stories. It extends into the body, the senses, and the subtle knowledge encoded through experience. The resurfacing of old skills shows that the mind carries far more potential than it reveals on an ordinary day. The mind holds potential personalities that never surface. Within each person exists a range of possible selves shaped by memory, imagination, and the many paths life could have taken. Some remain quiet because circumstances never called them forth. Others appear briefly, then fade when the moment passes. These unrealized personalities are not illusions. They are genuine possibilities, encoded in the mind's emotional and cognitive structure. They hold traits, perspectives, interests, and capacities that could have become central had different choices or experiences shaped development. Occasionally, a new environment or unexpected challenge may awaken one of these dormant selves, revealing a side of identity that feels both surprising and strangely familiar. Their existence highlights the fluidity of identity and the vast potential contained within the mind. You are not limited to the person you appear to be. You are the culmination of countless possibilities, many of which remain quietly present beneath the surface. Your awareness shifts constantly between inner and outer worlds. Attention moves like a gentle beam, illuminating different layers of experience from moment to moment. It may rest on sensations from the outside world, sharpened by sight, sound, and touch. Then it may turn inward, exploring emotion, memory, or imagination. These shifts happen with remarkable fluidity, yet awareness often feels continuous because the transitions are smooth. The mind balances these two realms to maintain a sense of stability. Too much focus on the outer world may drown out the needs of the inner one. Too much attention on the inner world may blur the signals of the environment. Awareness flows through both, gathering impressions that shape understanding. This quiet movement reveals how deeply the mind interweaves perception and introspection, creating a unified experience from two very different realms. The mind contains more mysteries than you could explore in a lifetime. Even with constant reflection, learning, and discovery, the mind remains vast in ways that exceed understanding. Beneath every thought lies another layer of complexity shaped by biology, memory, imagination, and countless influences that operate without awareness. The mind carries patterns that evolved across ages, personal stories that shift with time, and potential that may never fully unfold. Some processes guide emotion. Others shape perception. Still others create meaning from experiences that feel too subtle to articulate. Attempts to map the mind reveal only glimpses of its depth. The rest remains hidden, waiting for moments of insight that arrive without warning. This mystery is not a limitation. It is a source of wonder, reminding you that your inner world stretches far beyond what you can see. The mind is an unfolding landscape, rich with secrets that continue to evolve for as long as you live. As the night settles around you, let the ideas you heard soften into a gentle hush, settling wherever they need to rest. The mind is a vast and luminous place, full of hidden pathways and quiet wonders, and you have spent this time exploring it with curiosity and ease. There is nothing more you need to understand right now. Nothing more you need to hold. Just let the last traces of thought drift like slow-moving clouds across a peaceful sky. If you enjoyed this quiet exploration, you are always welcome to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps this little corner of calm reach others who might also need a soft place to land at the end of the day. But for now, all you need to do is unwind. Let the day fade away. Allow your eyes to grow heavy. And let your inner world grow warm and silent as you gently dirty towards sleep. Good night.